6:15. Fed the dogs, took them out. That's late. Usually they go out. They usually eat around 6, but Carly was getting a little anxious. She's in the bedroom, 6:15. She's like, time to eat. It's really time to eat. I'm like, okay. One last mic check.
Yes.
Okay. Alright. Make sure I'm not too loud. I've been known to get loud when I talk.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not?
Oh yeah, you are. I
Keep your hands on that fader board.
Yep. Oh, gotta shut him off. Okay. Yeah, last week I didn't have enough high enough. The first couple 10-15 seconds. Hello, couldn't hear myself.
Well, you get to learn how to use the new board when it comes in. I am hoping
that'll be cool.
I am hoping that the money will be in next week and I can get it shipped in for next weekend. Hopefully.
That'd be cool.
It would be cool.
Be a lot of coming in early, hooking stuff up. Cool. Or coming in during the week and doing it, one or the other. Because
it may be the latter than the former. You know, I have the grand illusion of just, okay, unplug from here, plug in there. Unplug from here, plug in there. And then presto, everything works.
Turn you on.
You're hissing.
Hmm?
It's hissing.
Yeah, a little. It's okay. I can take it out. Recent events in Colorado where 2 state senators were recalled over their anti-Second Amendment votes inspired me to add a new addition to the Democrat dictionary. Vote suppression.
Oh?
Vote suppression. When Democrats lose.
Oh, we've heard that over and over again. That's nothing new.
Yes, but it hadn't been entered yet. So, one interesting point about that, a PPP had a poll.
Oh, yes.
It showed that Colorado State Senator Angela Giron would lose.
No, that would be from Louisiana or the Canucks further north.
Anyway, the poll said that she would lose, and they didn't post it. They didn't make it public before the election.
Well, mostly because they didn't believe it.
Well,
at least that's what they said.
You'll,
that's what they said.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of debate about whether or not PPP is a lot of P-popping there. Democrats sort of
it is
favored polling company. Everyone's no. So here's the question: if they aren't, why wouldn't they release unfavorable polling results before an election?
I think that's a very good question, and I don't think that what conventional wisdom was, here you've got 2 people elected in very, very much Democrat districts. Obama carried them in the last election by huge amounts. They were relatively safe. Between the 2 of them, they got $3 million to defend themselves. The opposite side got $540,000, $350,000 of that from the NRA. But still, they got outspent by huge amounts.
Bloomberg, yeah.
Bloomberg threw in lots of money. So I've heard anywhere from 6 to 1 to 7 to 1 in favor of these 2 state senators. And they got blown out of their races by 2, 3, 4%. That was started by 2 plumbers and an electrician, not political consultants.
This whole vote suppression meme that they're running, really, I have questions. I mean, the Obama OFA data machine, OFA's real big on the gun violence thing. They were involved. They've got data, they've got ground game, they've got door knockers, they've got phone callers, they've got everything. You mean to tell me that all these people talked to all these people? We know they did. We know they reached out to all those voters, and they didn't tell them once that they had to go to the poll and vote on a date date and time, they probably told them every chance they got.
Well, they may have told them via emails, robocalls. I'm not so sure about all the door knockers and stuff like that, because OFA has taken the stance against quote-unquote gun violence, which I call just evil people picking up a tool that best suits them versus it being gun violence. You and I both know they're just hunks of metal and plastic, period. It takes evil intent to use them in such a way.
Kind of like government.
Yeah. But they've been calling for these rallies along with everybody else. But if you notice at the OFA rallies, 2 people show up, no people show up. I mean, I'm not sure that OFA is going to translate well to somebody or something other than Obama.
How about the media? The media wasn't going to bring it up.
The media, Democrats with bylines. As has been pointed out, when you look at the very top, they're all intertwined with Democrat spouses or formerly Democrat positions. It's just the way it is. But you know something? I think perhaps people are starting to catch on. Either you are in that camp where you only listen to MSNBC, CNBC, or the 3 major networks, all of that, or you're listening to Fox News, other new media outlets. I mean, we are becoming segregated, I think, for news outlets here in this country. All you have to do is look at the, this will drive Sandra Rice Hawkins crazy. I haven't written about this yet, but if you look, you see certain counties in Maryland, Colorado, and California all deciding we want to secede from our states because they don't represent us anymore. And that's where I'm looking at this victory for gun rights in Colorado, in that I think people are starting to wake up once again and say, this isn't working for me. If I'm not being represented correctly, and I don't have a ghost of a chance of being represented at this point.
My reason for asking was because Colorado is, I wrote the post, a new Colorado motto, GrokTALK.com. You're listening to GrokTALK, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for choosing us, wherever you chose us from. The Colorado model is, of course, the way in which Democrats would take over state governments. And I just found it very humorous that in Colorado, they got kind of Colorado modeled in these 2 races. From the grassroots.
From the grassroots. And it points out something that you and I were talking about before we started the show. And of course, GrokTALK is a production of Grok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative and libertarian blog site, where our emphasis is individual liberties and freedoms. We try to write from that perspective all the time. And here on GrokTALK, we talk about things from that perspective and viewpoint and worldview. You're right, but how much of that is just part of the pendulum, that everybody has these ideas of how to push the electorate their way, and it works for a while, and then the pendulum just happens to start swinging the other way, and in the case of Colorado and the Colorado model, the Democrats and the progressives and the socialists who wanted certainly more of a one-world government in a little state, they were just along for the ride, pushing it just a little bit like somebody pushing a kid on a swing. The kid's already swinging, they just add a little bit more force to it. And now the swing is starting to go the other way.
Well, it certainly did on this issue. I mean, you could argue overreach, definitely. There was a lot of that. And a lot of places, one of the things about being a conservative is that when something happens, you don't just have a knee-jerk reaction to it. You analyze it, you look at it in real terms, not necessarily in rhetorical terms or political terms. You look at the real-world complications, whatever they may be. You study, you analyze, you compare to past events in history, you look for similar experiences or examples, and then you try to formulate a judgment. Does something need to be done? What does that something need to be, if anything at all? Have we already put something in place that would have addressed it that was mishandled? You look at all the calculus, you look at all the math, you look at everything. Liberals don't do that. Liberals see an opportunity to advance their agenda. Newtown provided them with opportunity.
Aurora in Colorado.
States like New York jumped into this 7-round ban on guns, affected police officers, private investigators, regular citizens, and it essentially was completely unworkable as a piece of legislation. But rather than figure that out in advance, They just jumped all over it and passed it anyway.
Yeah.
Colorado, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I think Colorado is a great counterpoint because, they've been under the gun. We had some severe weather, the night before last. Continual stream of thunderstorms kept knocking me off the network because, I live on the side of a mountain. I've had electronics fried before by a nearby lightning strike. And so I would shut down. I have a coworker who lives out in Colorado. And, in one day, I think it was Tuesday, they had 8 inches of rain. So they're undergoing massive floodings out there in the mountain areas, and that's where she lives. So she's been out of touch for a while now, and we've all seen it on the TV, the massive floods that you normally don't get. Plus, couple that with all the mudslides because everything burnt during the summer with the massive fires that they had as well. So, as a conservative, you say, okay, here's a case of 2 different crises. There is an infrastructure crisis because lots of roads have been wiped out. The normal thing a conservative is going to say, that is one of the limited functions of government, be it local, county, or state. Put that infrastructure back because we depend upon that. People are trapped, people are isolated. You got to take care of that. It's a knee-jerk reaction to say, let's do this. It's the social engineering that they did in Colorado with the gun rights, supposedly gun rights stuff. It's more like people control, where they said we're going to eliminate all these kinds of guns, we're going to eliminate all these kinds of magazines, to the point where good chunks of their industry just up and left, and a lot of the traditional hunting, fishing, and other outside sports industries are also suffering because people are saying, I may not be a shooter, but look what you did, I'm not coming. I can go somewhere else. I can take my discretionary money and say, I disagree with that. And who gets hurt? The little guy in Colorado. That's where the conservative would stop and say, what are the ramifications? And I think you're right. Even here in New Hampshire, people knee-jerk reaction to laws. And, names. Horrible at names. The former majority leader under Bill O'Brien that was going to law school.
Oh. Yeah, him.
I can't remember. Well, he proposed a law. There was
full of information.
Yes, it'll come to me later. No, that's not him. But anyways, there was this case.
Oh God! You didn't turn the camera on, so this is.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did.
I did.
People get to see what you just did.
Yes.
That's funny.
So, there was this case where a mother supposedly or allegedly killed their daughter. Didn't inform the police until days or weeks later. So a law was proposed. You will be, breaking the law if your child goes missing and you don't report it within 24 hours. Now I'm thinking, what parent isn't going to do that after 40 minutes and the kid goes missing? A good parent. And a bad parent isn't going to do it anyways, right? Because it just doesn't work. But it was a knee-jerk reaction to something that has never happened here really in New Hampshire that we could tell. But they had to do something. And this is even a Republican, a decent Republican from his views mostly, more establishment than Tea Party type deal, or conservatarian, as our friend Jeff Chittister would put it. It was a solution looking for a problem. And I think that's what I see a lot of progressives do, other than their overall agenda seems to be, we will have government make all the big decisions for you, end of story. So we will engineer you to be enlightened. It's like, no, leave me the hell alone. And that's where I think you're right. And I've gone on far too long about something that just
no, that's a good way to start the show. We, just to let you know, Ashley Pratt from Cornerstone Policy Research will be back today to talk to us about legislative priorities, the legislative agenda. We'll probably try to touch on Planned Parenthood being a navigator of Obamacare, which they are, and big labor coming out against Obamacare. And Skip and I were talking about that this morning, and we'll go into that. Kevin Kerbick, I believe is how he pronounces his name, is an author, Southern New Hampshire University professor. He's going to join us to talk about some unique political circumstances in his life and how he is trying to inject some common sense conservatarian principles into the White Tower establishment and to the little kiddies who go there. Kevin is the guy who, when I wrote my post about Hitler not being a conservative,
Oh, yes.
He's the guy who said, I think I'm going to include that in my lesson plan. This is an SNHU professor now. SNHU is a nice school. It's not cheap. Beautiful campus.
And we go there quite often. They open up their campus facilities for a lot of political events.
So he's probably not conservative like us, but it's definitely an avenue into the younger minds and into a formula for getting there, because it's a tough environment to have to operate in and to try to have an even-keeled message. And New Hampshire Rep. Jane Cormier will be here from the Belknap County Conservative Republican Committee, and we'll get some updates from her on what's going on with that little project. And she mentioned wanting to talk about establishment Republicans, which I think means it might involve the woodshed, but we'll have to see how that's going. We also we're talking about some other things that we wanted to touch on. We may or may not explore them, but I was trying to pull some stuff this morning when I got up to talk about in the morning, because show prep is like 5 minutes, you know.
Well, our whole week before this is show prep.
Well, yeah, in all fairness, because we blog every day, a lot of things that we bring up are things that we spoke about during the week. One of the things I noticed this morning was that on Powerline, it reported that Gene Simmons thinks Tim Tebow's getting a raw deal.
Yep.
Excuse me, here's the quote. He's got a religious passion. This is Gene Simmons.
And remember, who is he
Gene Simmons,
with?
frontman for KISS.
Yes.
Bought himself a football team, too. He's got a religious passion as well. He should. We're in America, the KISS frontman told radio.com earlier this week. He's proud to be a Christian. What's wrong with that? And yet, with sports media and pop culture media, they make fun of his religion? Really? In America? If he was wearing a burqa, which means if he was Muslim, because obviously he wouldn't be wearing a burqa, they wouldn't dare say...
Transgender Muslim?
Yeah, they wouldn't dare say anything. But if you're a Christian, you get to be picked on? What the hell? The guy's got family values. I never saw the media picking on Michael Vick for torturing dogs, or this other football player who alleged to have committed murder. That's cool. But a guy who's religious and has got family values isn't cool? He's cool to me.
You know, I watched that, and as an evangelical Christian, I looked at what was then being said to be Tebowing. He gets down on a knee and says, "Thank you. Thank you for not just getting me a touchdown, but thank you for giving me the ability that you have." I think one of the things that we've lost here in this country with the rise of the welfare state is a lack of thankfulness. And of course, with the rise of secularism, well, there doesn't seem to be anybody to thank either.
It occurs to me that the congressional equivalent of Tebowing is when elected officials take lobbyist money and then vote the way they've been told to vote.
That's a little different.
Thank you. Thank you for the money and the influence. And I'm going to go vote now. I'll be right back. Anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, here's a guy who, like him or not, he's got a lot of energy. He's very positive. He's enthusiastic about what he's trying to do, and he tries to do better. Maybe he's gone outside his skill set from time to time, and that's fine. Everybody should try to do that, right? I mean, we're not looking for people who want to sit in a hammock. We're looking for people who want to go out and challenge themselves and try to contribute in some way. And he believes that his positive outlook, his skill set, everything about him is a result of,
God's gift to him.
God's gift to him. And he's just saying, thanks for helping me.
Yes.
Thanks for giving me direction. Thanks for just being inside me, part of me, and giving me the strength to try to do this,
Study after study has shown that the left, be they Democrats or progressives, tend to be much more secular in their outlook. In other words, they might give a pat answer, yeah, I'm sort of religious, but most often they are much more likely not to be churchgoers, not to be guided by religious values, and as we have seen lately, we're seeing society move to that direction. So in a lot of cases, here's what I would consider a fine young upstanding man, won a Heisman Trophy, 2 national championships. So the guy's good. The guy's much better than almost all of us all together. Maybe not.
He'd be a 1%er.
He is definitely a 1%er in ability.
In talent.
Right. But, in the rarefied air of NFL quarterbacks, that's probably, you need to be the 0.001% to be that kind of person. Not, if you're just 0.1, maybe not so much. it really matters how little difference there is between being really good like he is and being really great like Tom Brady is. But I look at that and I go, where has society gone? Because that used to be something that people would acknowledge and say, yeah, that's a good thing. Because they believe in something bigger than themselves. They also believe that one day they're going to be held accountable. And between those two things, I look at that as being goodness, because it tends to reinforce the internal governor that should be guiding most of us. That little picture of the angel and the devil on each of your shoulders. Which one are you going to listen to? And it seems like contemporary society is flicking both of them off, because they don't want to listen to the angel, because that's trying to limit what they should do. And they're flicking off the devil because they've got worse plans than the devil does.
This segues really nicely into the next point, which was from the Daily Caller. IRS and Eric Holder, speaking of internal governors for Democrats, IRS and Eric Holder advised black ministers how to engage in political activity without violating their nonprofit status. We're going to, first of all, equip them with the information they need to know about what they can say and what they cannot say in the church that would violate their 501c3 status with the IRS, said then CBC Chairman Rep. Emanuel Cleaver, a Democrat from Missouri. In fact, we're going to have the IRS administrator there. We're going to have Attorney General Eric Holder there and the ACLU. So much for the wall of separation between church and state, I guess.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that group out of Minnesota, the Freedom from Religion group, is going to descend upon them like a pack of wolves.
Barry Lind
Barry Lind from the Americans for
Separation for the Separation of Church, whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, which oftentimes is just more of a front group for leftism anyways.
Big time.
Well, because again, they're against traditional values. And I'm sorry, but if people, here's a case where I don't think many people understand the history of the Revolutionary War era of America. It wasn't until a lot of the pastors from their pulpits kind of formed the Black Robe Regiment that the American Revolution actually started to happen. So I don't understand, and this really stems out of a rule, not a law, but a rule, that LBJ, early in his career, had passed because the pastors were speaking out against him, and he had designs on being a higher level politician, which we all know. He gained and then kind of walked away, went, oops, that did not work out too well. Unfortunately, I think he was one of those people, like FDR and Wilson, brought great harm to this country with the war on poverty. Not so much that it's a bad idea, but they decided that government was the way to make that work. And of course, he was also hamstrung by the Vietnam War. But how's that war on poverty dealing with us? Trillions spent, and poverty percentage rate hasn't really budged.
Yeah, it's been going up lately.
But at the same time, I blame him for this part because it hamstrung pastors from being able to speak out on the current events of the day and say, look, government's getting bigger. Why can't we influence the government just like everybody else? Because, and now it's come full circle where Obama is basically saying, or misquoting the First Amendment, which says that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of religion, and now he's saying the freedom of worship.
Well, it's like a 60-year head fake.
Yeah.
You pump fake, you freeze the linebacker. Well, here's the story. The Democrats say, you know what? You shouldn't talk about politics in your church.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever reason.
And what have we been seeing over the last 60 years?
Right, for whatever reason, right? Okay? So then they take those 60 years and they infiltrate the church. They got through the Catholic Church, which has always been suspect as a top-down organization because that's how it's built, Mm-hmm. They've got the UCC, you've got all these different Protestant
social gospel
churches that have been infiltrated and have been built up as social gospel churches for 50 years. Now, there's lots of them. They're everywhere. Now might not be a bad time after you made your head fake 60 years ago to make the pass and say, all right, now that we've got a massive amount of control in a lot of these places, now it's not everywhere. New Hampshire is a great example.
Yeah, we are one of the most unchurched states in the nation. But here's the point. You look at the Presbyterian and...
well, plus they ruin church. Most people don't go anymore.
Well, and that was the point I was going to make, that in the main... Well, the pop culture has turned against the church. Or most churches, period. But you look at the mainline Christian church, like the Episcopalians, the Presbyterians, I've been blogging about this for years. Their attendance figures are plummeting. I mean, they're in free fall. And those that are in charge, and I forget the lady's name that is now in charge of the Presbyterian church, is saying, well, we'll just have a more solid core. I'm sorry, you're lying to yourselves. Look what your theocracy has done. Theocracy, or your theological point's really not a theocracy. That's the mullahs in Iraq. But you look at the theological stances, and they become much more culture attuned versus biblical attuned. I mean, you will hear the phrases, but if you start, and the quotes from the Bible, but you start looking at the entire passages, you're seeing that a lot of times they're being quoted out of context. They're also missing the whole point as far as I as an evangelical are concerned. Yes, there are good works to be done. There's no doubt about it. But the main mission of a church is to save someone's soul, not to be, walking the Washington Mall for this issue or that issue. So even though they have converted these churches to the social gospel and they're pushing a political agenda, less and less and less people are actually listening to them. So they've sort of become self-defeating at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of time for that subject too. One more thing before we go to our break, and Ashley's here, so we're going to bring her in the next half hour. But you can see her on the camera.
Yeah, we have to make sure of that.
Yes. Syria, real quick. We've spent a lot of juice on this just because it's interesting to watch that whole situation. I was thinking last night, and I'm like, this seems to be like a major screw up. I mean, we've talked about the major screw up and how it's going on, but it's a major screw up because the lefty media is really very unhappy with how this is going. Even the people who are trying to put a good spin on it are like, this really isn't the right way to go. So it made me think back to the 2008 election when Obama picked Joe Biden. Why? Why did he pick Joe Biden? I'm trying to remember. And I think it had something to do with foreign policy, didn't it?
Yeah, it's worked out real well.
Yeah, it's worked out real. Now, have you heard anything from Joe on Syria? I don't recall hearing anything from Joe.
No, the only thing we've heard from him lately is something that the arborist put up. He's calling us the Neanderthals. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to talk about, a post I put up. Well, we'll talk about when Jane Cormier comes in.
You got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay, I'll shut up.
No, you can keep going. No, Joe's been really, really quiet on the one
They muzzled him.
On the one issue for which he was chosen. Don't you think that's a little weird?
I think even progressives can learn from mistakes.
Yes, they can. They seem to have forgotten that whenever Joe ran for president, he couldn't even get 5% of Democrats to vote for him. I think that's important. And yet he's a heartbeat away.
Oh boy.
And his niece votes in New Hampshire.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, we haven't even gone that far yet. The Manchester Nest is on the list. We'll be getting there soon. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy. Next half hour, Ashley Pratt from Cornerstone Research to talk about all kinds of interesting things. We'll be right back.
Grok TV.